Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Welcome to this episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Super Two. Tribute today is
A Geek for Fun.
And me.
Yay! It's me, everybody's favorite Geeky Gentleman.
I've been on this show for so many fucking years. I am like the second longest tradition of this thing besides you. They know who I am.
No, they don't. You must
Yes,
introduce yourself every time. Every Geeky Gentleman episode is somebody's first Geeky Gentleman episode.
You know, I think you're right, Stanley. All right. I'm Steve.
Yay! And today we're talking about what ifs. Alfie recently posted 2 videos in a new series on his channel of what if Goku and Vegeta were in Dragon Ball, and they are kind of having a meteoric rise. Pretty soon Alfie's going to be, the clout influencer, so we got to get our digs in on him now and make him feel small and insignificant while he still feels some kind of gratitude toward us. No, but those have been really successful, which is just kind of cool and crazy to watch. And the comments are absolutely hilarious. I think my favorite is my favorite so far has been, "But Vegeta isn't in DC. He's in Dragon Ball. Don't you even fucking know what you're talking about?" That one's gold.
One of my favorites I've seen has been if Vegeta was in DC, he would be shit like everything in DC except for Batman, Shazam, Flash, and also Titans.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so I don't know, just watching those, it's got me thinking about what ifs, and just, I thought it'd be fun to discuss, like, the appeal of what ifs, both, fan-made and official what ifery. Because, I mean, it's not a small thing. Marvel's obviously had what if issues going back decades. DC, I prefer what they do because they kind of, like, really lean into it and do full-on Elseworlds, which are really fun. But I don't know. What do you guys think of what ifs? Steve.
I like them. I like them a lot more now than I ever did before. Because when I was a kid, I used to hate them, and it always really bothered me because it just made me think, I'm only ever going to get this in a really, really small dose. And if I like it, then it's like a betrayal because I'll never get more of it. So I should just hate them on principle because they're not the preferred continuity that I will get lots of. So
that is such a young Steve perspective. I'm gonna hate it on principle.
I never really got into them. But then I got older and I realized continuity is whatever the fuck you want it to be or whatever Grant Morrison says it is. So I'm like, oh, it's fine. You can do Elseworlds. It's a cool idea. I've never had a particular Elseworld ever like really resonate or seem really cool, and it's never been anything that I've been like super invested in, like fan-made continuity and headcanon and that kind of stuff's never really been my bag. But I definitely see the appeal, and it makes more sense to me on film than it does anywhere else. So like the Joker movie basically being its own little standalone Elseworldy thing is kind of awesome to me, and I'm really excited for it because that means we don't have to see a sequel and it can just be like a one and done. Or like what Alfie's been doing with Vegeta and Goku in the DC universe, because that's just hilarious and fascinating on principle. But yeah, I have no strong opinions. I don't follow a lot of Elseworlds. The only like big Elseworlds I ever read were all the Batman ones, and I never liked any of them really. Like the Batman Who Laughs is like the cringiest thing I've ever read.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what if my dad tried to listen to metal with me?
That is actually such an accurate description of, like, I'm a big Scott Snyder fan as well, but I like that legit fits him so well.
Oh man.
I kind of have the same problem with everything he's ever written after, like, his main Batman book, honestly.
Okay.
But I think you've got a good. I get a lot of what you're saying as well, with like the ideas of it being. It's something you can only really get into, at least for me and my experience with it, if there's like a point to it. A lot of the early Marvel What Ifs, like when What If was like its own comic, like in the 70s, and then when it got rebooted now and again, like it pops up again. There was a recent one with like Punisher, Spider-Man and stuff. Sometimes when it's just the gimmick, where it's just like, what if this event in continuity went different because it's a famous thing, and we're not really going to do anything about it because we only got one issue to tell the story, so we kind of go back to it. Those always annoyed me, and I'm kind of agreeing with you, Steve, where I always felt, well, that was cool, but like I want to see the actual stories and the narrative that continued with this. Like a lot of the Spider-Man books would do a lot of those, where key events in Spider-Man comics would just be like, oh, here's what would happen if that didn't happen. And it would end. It was like, okay, but I'm just going to read Spider-Man now anyway, because it's so continuity heavy. That's like, there's no point. I feel like with individual characters, and throwing them in situations where they would never be allowed to do in the main books, like even outside of, say, like a different Earth, because I feel like a What If is fundamentally different than, say, oh, we're gonna go visit Earth 2. Even though they're kind of similar, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just, I feel like you're deliberately really trying to say, okay, here's a different story. Like Superman Red Son, for example, a very simple concept, but it completely changes the story of Superman and like is unrecognizable from different elements apart from like character names. I feel like that's something different and more interesting as a concept and more like idea. Okay, so this is, we're exploring something we'd never be able to do with a character in canon versus the difference between pre-crisis and post-crisis.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. And that's the thing for me is like, some of the opportunities that you get in Elseworlds are really fascinating, and that's why I kind of always preferred them to What Ifs, because I've read good What Ifs, but a lot of What Ifs are just like, all right, so you mentioned Peter Parker's Punisher, and that was a recent one that's in my head. Funny side note, I actually own a comic that's like worth $400, and it's a Deadpool What If. What if the Venom symbiote possessed Deadpool?
Yeah,
because like nobody fucking bought it besides me on a whim for $3. But anyway, so like every time I read a Marvel What If, and maybe this is just not me being not much of a Marvel guy, it always seems like, all right, let's tell this entire character's life story in 24 pages, and I'm like, you really couldn't just tell like a story with this character. You had to go like through the origin and just keep going. And so like the Spider-Man Punisher one was like, okay, so he was Spider-Man, and then Uncle Ben died, and then he took it a lot harder, so he became the Punishing Spider, and then it's just the Spider-Man continuity, but now he kills people the whole way fucking through. And the only kind of interesting part was at the very end where Peter Parker does the whole Spider-Man No More thing and abandons his costume in a trash can the same day that Frank Castle's family dies. And I'm like, that's a weird idea. So Frank Castle's now inspired by Spider-Man? What? So like you get weird stuff like that. And it's so brief that you never have time to get attached to it, even if the idea is strong. Because what if Spider-Man did become kind of more like the Punisher? That's a legitimately interesting idea, because his background isn't entirely different as far as like his tragic past. You know, Frank Castle's family died. Uncle Ben died because Peter was selfish. You could see that kind of becoming the like a Punisher route for Spider-Man. What if we did have a more brutal Spider-Man? I could see that, because that's got interesting implications for the universe, and Spider-Man's kind of the heart of the Marvel universe. There's a lot going on there. But they just cover so much in such a short span of time that it's all worthless. Whereas DC stuff will tend to go for either, like, when they do an Elseworlds, they tend to be extra-sized issues, or sometimes they'll be, like, 2-3-part stories.
I think that's fair, but I also feel like What If fundamentally changed in recent years in a way that it hasn't, that it didn't operate before.
Okay.
Because the old school What If comics were always one of two things. They were either always, here's a really, really big important story with a twist, and what if the twist just didn't happen? So, like, for example, what if the clones lived in the Clone Saga? Or what if the Phoenix Force and Jean Grey didn't die? In which case, the what if is kind of boring because now suddenly you've just changed the ending of the story and you don't get to live with any of that. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you always get the what ifs that are singular stories that either just open with a brief recap or like explain how from the present continuity you got to this new situation and then just tell a story in that situation. So, like, for example, what if Captain America became president? Or what if Daredevil was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent? Like, I think the old school what ifs were a little bit better about this. There was even like a really weird, interesting one where, like, what if in Wolverine's first appearance he actually killed the Hulk?
Okay.
So, like, I think that they did that. But it's also partly because DC has always had a more established concept of a multiverse than Marvel's ever had. Mm-hmm. And Marvel's been getting it in recent years, like, especially after Jonathan Hickman started writing Avengers. And, like, we got Spider-Gwen and an ongoing, and 2099 became its own, like, wrong-running thing, and we had the noir universe going on for a while and the Ultimates. But Marvel's never really been fully comfortable with a multiverse. So having concurrently running multiverse books just feels like it's a separate brand than what they've always done. So classic what ifs were always just like good, almost like day in the life one shots. And I feel like those are really good. And I always enjoyed those. Like the what if Daredevil become a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent is actually a really, really fun issue. And it's the only like great what if story that I can think of off the top of my head from a comic.
See, it's interesting to hear you say that because I was basing a lot of what I was saying there off of like a more recent what if. But also, maybe I just bad lucked into it. I remember, I think it was last Free Comic Book Day, the store was just selling like $1 issues or whatever for like bad quality old comic books. And I picked up a what if that was, what if Spider-Woman, Captain Marvel, and Ghost Rider stayed villains? And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. And it's exactly what I was just describing with the Punisher thing, where it's like, okay, here's the whole origin over again, and then they're just a bad guy forever. I'm like, well, that was anticlimactic. So it might be that it's like kind of sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses, and it just the hits tend to be remembered more.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of it feels like, especially those older what ifs were normally done by the same, like if they did like when they did what if Gwen Stacy never died, that was written by Jerry Conway as well. I feel a lot of those when they came out, they were normally relatively close to the big event that they were talking about, or at least tried to mirror the art style of the time or some connection from someone who'd worked on that book. I think the Phoenix one you mentioned, Steve, also is like got Claremont's involvement. I'm not particularly sure on that. Correct me. But those feel are more. You can really tell the creators were just having fun with it, and I feel like that is. You can tell the big, expansive, like thematic things, but at the end of the day, it is such a. Even the name alone is such a kid school ground fun concept of what if this happened? What if you got to play with your action figures without worrying necessarily about it making sense? And I really like that approach sometimes as well, because for some reason, Marvel just really fucking hates Spider-Man in these things, because, like, the dude has died in so many of these what-ifs, and, like, even the ones you think wouldn't have him get killed, he just finds a way to kill Spider-Man at the end.
It's like those old episodes of South Park where they just got tired of writing clever ways to kill Kenny, so it would just happen.
Yeah, it's precisely that. Like there was one which I really liked because I think it's just interesting concept. It was, what if Spider-Man never got rid of the black suit? Which, I mean, that's a thing a lot of people ask. And this was before the whole 90s show retcon where they made it so like the black suit like is an evil influencer that boosts your strength. It was like back then it was just a parasite. So it eventually just kept draining him until like he just became a husk. It's really fucked up. Like it's not one of those things where, oh, he'll become Venom or he'll become evil. It's just he takes off the suit one day and he's an old man and everyone has to deal with it and he just dies really sadly. And it's just so fucking depressing and bleak, but it's also like really funny.
There's a what if story at some point where it's like the title is literally what if the Avengers beat everybody, and it's like literally what if there was just a world peace because the Avengers defeated everybody, and I'm almost positive Spider-Man dies in that for no reason.
That's so cruel.
So I think this is partly interesting. I what I do like about what if sometimes is when they influence main continuity in a way where the what if suddenly becomes just part of the status quo that we admit in. So like Batman Beyond is kind of a what if, but it wasn't designed that way from the people who made it. And very quickly after just having this Batman Beyond a concept take off, the DC universe ever since New 52 has always like subtly been hinting at like, yeah, eventually down the line, Batman Beyond does happen in continuity. We're just never going to infinitely get there. And I like that. Jane Foster becoming Thor was originally a what if issue in the 70s, and now that's a mainstay in canon.
Yeah. I love how like Scott Snyder really tried to lean into that, like he was gonna get to do it or something, to the point where like Bruce wears a prototype of the Batman Beyond suit just in his run, and like their reasoning for why it's being thrown away is so dumb. Oh, it's so expensive, we'd never be able to mass produce it. It's a fucking Batman uniform. How much mass production do you need? Is it gonna go on store shelves?
Tom King making Flashpoint Batman a part of the main canon is arguably one of the best what if or alternate universe coming into main continuity things ever.
I mean, I'm
arguably.
I'm just gonna say this. Like, this is a controversial opinion. A lot of people hate Flashpoint. I like it because I just viewed the whole thing of, oh yeah, we just stepped into the what if universe for like 5 minutes. And I love Flashpoint for that. It's got so many good ones. It's just like the really dark what ifs that are like super fun to think about and get fucked up. Like, goddamn, if the what ifs, the Flashpoint Superman is just one of the darkest fucking things ever. Like, I always remember just when they're going into the bunker where they keep his ass, and they just pass the case with the dog skeleton. It's so sad. And I kind of love it for that. I will admit, like, it doesn't make much sense by the end of it, but I mean, shit, it's a cool ass idea in that, like, you know, preteen dark ass way. And yeah, I mean, like, you're right. King's doing inarguably infinitely more fascinating things with Thomas Wayne Batman than Flashpoint did, but at the same time, Thomas Wayne Batman, Martha Wayne the Joker is such a cool idea to me. I love that little twist on it, because I never would have thought of that in a million years, and I thought it was incredibly clever at the time.
At the time, I remember being very distracted by just how much I hated Barry Allen to appreciate any of the what-if things happening in Flashpoint, but I could definitely give you that.
Yeah.
Just really, really, really quick side tangent. The biggest problem with Flashpoint is that if Barry actually learned his lesson, the main continuity would have stayed Flashpoint, because he would have realized going back in time to try and fix the universe he's in so it looks more like the one he wants is a bad idea.
Well, my argument to that, though, would be the real reason Flashpoint makes no sense is why the fuck does the Flash going back in time to fix the bad timeline that one of his villains made to fuck with him a bad thing? If that happened to the Superman comic, people would be like legit. That's one of the only instances in fiction ever where the villain just gets off scot-free for, oh yeah, now your origin is infinitely worse because the villain got to do time travel better than you. Like, what the fuck?
That's Reverse Flash. He's the living
just has so many problems on so many levels. But ignoring that, I do agree, like, having a small set of time where, like, we just did a bunch of, like, what if Batman, what if Wonder Woman, what if Aquaman stuff set in Flashpoint was kind of fun. I wish DC would bring back the sort of 3-issue limited series Elseworld stories they did, where they got like really well-known, very specifically stylized creators to tell stories. So like Stan Lee's version of DC characters, or like getting Mike Mignola to do a Batman story like they did with Gotham by Gaslight. Like, what if we did that? Like, what if we got like, I don't know, fucking like Grant Morrison to do a Doctor Strange story over at Marvel in like one of these like prestige format 3-issue miniseries. He was
gonna do a Spider-Man one, which was planned, which was gonna be a what if, which I was actually really excited for. Back like this was before. I think this was still when he was at Marvel, like when he was X-Men days, and it was going to be like the John Romita Spider-Man travels to a different world and meets the Steve Ditko Spider-Man, where like Aunt May's dead, he's like really skinny and poor, and like this guy's married to a supermodel, and they were going to have an adventure together, and that sounded awesome.
That sounds like the greatest thing ever.
I mean, it's Grant Morrison. It would have been until he did something else, which would then trump it, and then everyone else has to try to catch up. That's, oh my God, Alfie. Grant Morrison is the Goku of the real universe.
Grant Morrison just is Goku.
Holy shit.
Oh man. What if
Does,
Goku met Grant Morrison?
You guys, what's the divide between alternate universe and what if? Because I feel like there's something fairly distinct in saying, like, Gotham by Gaslight is an Elseworld what if story. The Ultimate Universe is not.
Yeah.
I feel like you can go ahead, Ian, because I think I've got I don't know.
All right, so I would say the distinction is, like, is there a discernible difference, or is it just a separate continuity? Like, is there a discernible, like, okay, this is not even kind of close to the same thing. This has just radically changed everything about the universe or the character. Or, okay, this is basically a lot of the same check marks are made. It's just a separate continuity. That'd be my distinction. How about you, Alfie?
I think it's very much, if you can boil it down to, like, a sentence of the concept. So, for example, you can't really, good thing with the Ultimate Universe is you can't really pick one change that made everything the same, whereas I feel like a what if is specifically everything else you know is fine except for this one thing, and then these are the repercussions. So for, like, again, self plug here, the Goku thing, the DC universe I'm working with, I'm trying to keep as close to like the mainline Rebirth DC universe. The only change is Krypton's replaced with Planet Vegeta, or say Speeding Bullets, where it says everything you know is the same except Superman now lands and the Waynes find him, and that's what's changed. Whereas something like even the DC example, the Earth 1 books, there's no real discernible change there for what. You can't just say Earth 1, what is Superman Earth 1? What if a Superman book was the worst thing ever written?
Oh, ouch. Or you can't just say
Earth
Superman
1,
Earth...
Volumes 1 and 2 are amazing, and I love them.
You're lucky you're hot, man.
I am very lucky I'm hot, but so is Superman Earth 1.
No, see, you can do it with the Earth 1 books. What if we just change the gender of the villain at the last possible second for no discernible reason, and do it twice?
Yeah, do it twice unintentionally, because no one apparently talks to each other in the world of cell phones and internet.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Steve, do you think do you accept both of those, or do you have an argument to either of those?
I mean, I think you're right. It's just kind of weird in my head. Because, like, for example, the pitch for Ultimate Spider-Man was essentially a what-if scenario. Like, what if we just did Spider-Man again, except now it's the year 2000, and it's not 1963 or 1967, I think, whatever. I think that's a substantial jumping off point. But the fact that the universe went for so long and became its own universe starts creating the precedent for why it's not just a what if, that it is its own continuity, and that you can't distill it down to one specific sentence. So when we start talking about things like Flashpoint, it's weird to say Flashpoint is a what if it kept going. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but like the idea and kind of the quintessential paradox of wanting a what if story in the first place is that you only want a what if it's a what if. The moment it stops becoming that, the moment it becomes something that goes on and becomes its own continuity, I think the appeal is lost because the concept is lost. In a lot of the same way why Firefly is as well remembered as it is because it got canceled. What if stories only make sense, at least to me, or they only seem important if you only ever get a little bit of them. So I get what you're saying earlier about like not liking having like sort of just snapshots through the life. And what younger Steve was talking about, where like he can't get more of it, therefore he hates it. But to both of those people, I say, but that's the point, that you can't get more, and that's why you want it, and that's why it's fun, and that's why it's appealing.
Yeah, and see, for me, the thing that annoys me about the just snapshots through the life is, at that point, it's not a story, it's a Wikipedia, you know?
But that's still kind of cool to me. I don't know, like, I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy reading just like here is just a brief history of the world if this thing was different.
See, again, it's funny because I enjoy that in a YouTube video. I don't enjoy it in a comic book because maybe it's just the genre. Like when you get a YouTube video, it's like, okay, and here's his life like this, like this, like this. That's fun to me. But when it's in a comic, you know, I expect a goddamn story, and that is not a story. I want it to be more decompressed. And honestly, again, I don't care if you just change the world. Like for Flashpoint, Batman. It was a 3-issue comic of Thomas Wayne Batman trying to hunt down the Joker. And it was dark and scary. And the funny thing is, you know, everyone remembers Martha Wayne Joker and Thomas Wayne Batman. Martha Wayne Joker wasn't introduced in the main Flashpoint series, to my memory. She was introduced in the Batman spinoff, which was a cool thing to do. So it's like, it's its own story. It's 3 issues, it just takes its time, and it's just telling a story in that world. That I much prefer, because when you just tell a story in that world, you can insert those moments to reflect on the past or what's different about this world, and you still are getting a story as opposed to, again, a Wikipedia.
Yeah, and I feel like a really good idea that's been introduced in DC now, which I know the writer we keep mentioning, but Scott Snyder, I think this is legitimately a really good way to look at this going forward, and it kind of speaks to what both of you are talking about. And I hope DC capitalizes on the momentum and makes this even better than what the concept is. But when you introduce the idea of the dark multiverse, where if you think of the regular multiverse in DC as alternative universes, they are not what ifs because they are fully functioning things you can visit and they've got full histories. The idea of the dark multiverse, where there is like, when the worlds are being forged, these are the rejects because they don't work and they can't function for long, so they get sent back, and you just make those what ifs. I think that's a fantastic way to justify the difference in universe.
I think that's fair.
That would be fun. It'd be fun to get like a little anthology series that examines those worlds, kind of like Twilight Zone. Yeah,
it's one of those things where I really hope they do more, because like the Batman Who Laughs one was really bad, but I actually quite liked whatever the Doomsday Batman was, where it was like a critique of every Batman versus Superman story ever, where it was just, this is Bruce's irrational fear of Superman turning evil, and there's no reason for Superman turning evil in it. He's just evil because it's an irrational fear. You don't have to justify your page count to tell that story. You can just jump right in. And it, like, there's a part of that where like Batman's got the Kree and Kryptonite spear, and it's like a homage like BVS, and Superman just straight up says, yeah, this is ridiculous that you ever thought you could do this. And like being able to tell that in like a short one story of like these characters' completely nonsensical thoughts and fears and dreams as a what if, I think immediately adds what could be a goofy context, some like emotional weight to a specific character. Like if you make a series of Wonder Woman where it's just what are Wonder Woman's deepest, darkest, most, like, she knows this could never happen, but everyone's got those nagging fears, and you make an issue of that. Just one issue of just, this is what I was thinking, maybe what happened to Steve Trevor or something, that maybe there will never be world peace and it's like a dystopian future. You tell an issue with that, you get a good creator on that, never go back to that again. I think that's a really good way to do like what ifs as like a emotional thing at the same time, as doing the individual snapshot stories.
Shit, you know what would be the coolest fucking ongoing of all time that I would give all of my money to? What if we had a DC ongoing that was basically just the Twilight Zone, hosted by John Constantine, talking to the reader and introducing little pocket what if stories that are their own full-blown stories, but they're only like 5 or 6 pages, and you get like 3 per book, and it's all just darkly, sickly sweet narrated by John Constantine the whole time.
I was gonna say, you're dangerously close to Batman Damned.
I didn't read that. It looked dumb.
It had its moments. It was kind of sick to see Lee Bermejo redo panels from The Killing Joke in his style. If nothing else, it's worth issue 3. And I mean, issue 1, Batman's dick, so really, 2 out of 3 issues are completely justifiable to purchase, so your argument is invalid.
But they changed it, so it doesn't matter now.
Well, it matters to me, because I got the Batman dick version, so you need to stop sleeping on your shit. Anyway, no, but Batman Damned has like that moment of John Constantine narrates a good chunk of it. Which is kind of crazy. And also, Lee Bermejo drew Zatanna, and she looks amazing. So, yeah.
That almost convinced me to buy it almost immediately.
Yeah, I'll rep Batman Damned. I'm not sure how much sense the story makes, but goddamn, Lee Bermejo is like 90% of the reason Brian Azzarello has a career.
This is fair.
Like I like
Azzarello more than you do, but this is fair.
Yeah, I mean, just goddamn, I don't know what that dude would do without Bermejo. Anyway, so yeah, like I really like that. I like that idea, Steve. I could go for more just like a Tales from the Crypt kind of thing. That'd be fun.
And see, that's kind of what I like, is that I like Elseworld stories that know that they're Elseworlds, and so they play up on the fact that this is the quintessential difference. Like, it's almost like It's a Wonderful Life, where like, you know that this particular wish is the reason that everything is happening the way it is. And so like just focusing on the very specific consequences of this change, as opposed to just building a whole world around it, sounds a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah. And that's just kind of the fun of them. You know, we've done a lot of talking about like the official ones. Let's transition for a while and talk about some of the fan ones, because I think fan what ifs have a very unique potential, because you can do stuff that just legally would not be allowed to happen, like putting Dragon Ball in the DC universe. That'll probably never happen, or if it does, it'll be, you know, years out.
When Disney buys it.
Yeah, when Disney buys both. Like that's a ways out, or, you know, putting DC in Star Wars or Marvel in Star Wars, which, I mean, I guess that's closer to happening now than it ever has been, but it still seems kind of far out there. So, like, you know, you have the potential to cross over universes and fan stuff, which is just infinitely, like, you see all the results start to pop there. But also, you have the chance for fans to take their kind of sometimes nitpicky bullshit and actually make a really good argument for it. Like, again, I never would have agreed with this premise as anything worthwhile, but then I watched it and I saw why it was catching on, and then he made a damn fan series out of it. And that's Moscow X's What If Raditz Turned Good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty damn good.
I know, it's just like, you hear the premise and you're like, who the fuck cares about Raditz? And then he sells me on it. I mean, and what's really getting me is, I'm a Vegeta fan. The reason I like Dragon Ball is because I like Vegeta. And, you know, he kind of steals Vegeta's whole thing, but does it a little bit better, because he's got it all at least a little bit. He's got more of a premise for it going forward than Akira Toriyama ever had. Like, he's got a goal in mind the whole time, which helps. And so it's just, like it's kind of crazy to watch the Dragon Ball R&R episode and see Vegeta show up in that and just be a fucking like complete dick who has gone through almost no character development since the Saiyan saga, and be like, ah man, that's really unsettling. But at the same time, God, Raditz and Goku just hanging out is adorable.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think specifically for Dragon Ball, a lot of fans do that, and the reason why that's unquestionably the biggest what if thing on YouTube at the moment is there's so many fans in Dragon Ball that because of the nature of the series and because Toriyama was literally making up almost week to week, there are places in that story where if you change one thing, it changes the entire course of the series, and it can still be just as interesting because unlike DC, or any of the running comic universes, Dragon Ball is a finite story. It has beginning, a middle, and end. Obviously, Super and stuff is still continuing, but they're offshoots, and even they have endings. Like GT has a definitive ending. And you can play with all of those elements and all these different canons and all these different timelines and all these different characters. And you can throw them in. Like, I read a long time ago, I was really into this really good fan fiction called Bringer of Death, and it was about super edgy title, but it was about if Vegeta went Super Saiyan on Namek, and then how everything around that changed, and like he managed to bring in like the movies into it like seamlessly, because the advantage when fans have this is because they know what's coming up next and where the gaps are, they can make the things that shouldn't fit. Like you can make regular Broly before DBS turn up properly without really causing things, as long as you just mention some things. And I feel like that really helps propel that series, because when you got a story as simple as Dragon Ball, you're not really dealing with too many extenuating factors. There's no different universes you have to deal with. You can follow a single character story like Raditz and just see how he fits in with different characters interacting. And I find that really fun. I know you guys are Dragon Ball fans. Have you seen any of the ones that you've liked, or had any ideas for yourself of like stuff you'd want to change if like you had to make your own what if with that?
Dragon Ball Wrong Time. That is a what if that I think has had just so much potential, and it's kind of funny. Manos and I did a review of it. It's a fan manga, and the premise is, what if Trunks went to the wrong time and showed up during the Saiyan saga? Instantly sold. Like, I cannot think of a what if in Dragon Ball that didn't sell me as quick as that. Because, I mean, just shit. Trunks is already dealing with daddy issues. If he comes back when Vegeta is full-on villain, I'm there for it, man. Unfortunately, the writer-artist just started it when they were kind of losing interest in Dragon Ball, and then continued it for a couple years, and then just completely lost interest in Dragon Ball and didn't want to do it anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. But man, it is such a good premise.
What was the name of that one that you and I reviewed before, Ian? The one where it's Vegeta comes to Earth instead of Goku?
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Sai.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a classic.
Yeah, that one is really good too.
The guy who drew that's doing like official manga now. He did a Yamcha manga, like, and it's officially
Yeah,
published.
he did.
I don't understand how copyright law works in Japan. I don't get it. I don't understand it here, and I'm not sure if like we're the crazy ones and Japan's like, nah, fine, do fan stuff, whatever, make money off of it. If it's good enough, then we'll just recruit you. And it's like incredibly obvious, or like, I'm just like enslaved by American systems of, oh no, if you make a single penny off of fan work ever, you'll never get to work for the official thing. Sorry, just deconstructing there a little bit.
No, that's fair. It's very fair. I've always had a bunch of what if scenarios in my head. Part of my obsession with Dragon Ball and why I love it so much is because there's just so much I would fucking change if I ever had the power. Like, Ian and I have talked about some of this at length, but like, there's just a shit ton wrong with Dragon Ball, and I love it for it. I've always wanted to do a what if scenario of like, what if Goku became a Super Saiyan as a kid, kind of like Goku Jr. does?
Okay.
Just because I think it'd be interesting. Like what? Because Super Saiyan is a weird form where it's just a modifier on how much power you have. So if Goku becomes a Super Saiyan when he's a kid, then it doesn't actually mean that the amount that everyone he fights is suddenly now nothing. It means that as he gets older, just base Super Saiyan becomes infinitely more powerful to the point where like Goku probably wouldn't need much of anything to defeat Cell besides going Super Saiyan once. And
But then you
that
could
would be
also get
interesting.
in with something like that. You just making me think of is it'd be kind of one of those things where he'd stomp really hard early on, but because nothing would challenge him so much, his base would be a lot weaker. So when the Saiyans and stuff turn up, he might get like that 50 times boost, but because his original number's lower because he hasn't been challenged, it might find it much harder.
Yeah. No, there's a shit ton you could do with that if Goku was just Super Saiyan younger. The other idea I had was like, what if Super Saiyan 4 was the only Super Saiyan? I love the concept of Super Saiyan 4 being like some weird transformation that's just the perfect Saiyan body. So like when Vegeta goes Super Saiyan 4, he doesn't look like what Vegeta looks like except with fur. He looks like what Vegeta would look like if when at his youngest and strongest plus the fur and the hair and the tail. And so like what if that's just the only form of Super Saiyan? And it's almost as if the only time anytime anyone ever wants to do any sort of combat, that's the only thing Goku has to pull out. And everything else he has to do revolves around like actually knowing how to fight.
But then merchandising, Steve.
I know.
Yeah, that, you mentioned something a long time ago, Steve, and I kind of think about this. It's not quite a what if, but just thinking about like rebooting Dragon Ball has been something that's kind of stuck in my head, where it's like, so much of it was made up on the fly that it would be kind of interesting to go back and, tell the same story again, but obviously make it more concise. You wouldn't have the need for filler anymore, so that wouldn't be as much of a problem. And just really try to tell a streamlined story where you actually do proper foreshadowing instead of just lucking into it. Like that.
I would love to do a rewrite of Dragon Ball, going through Dragon Ball into Z, adding and shaking out stuff here, and then even like roping GT and Super into it, because I feel like you could do a very straight line. You just have to cut a lot.
Yeah, and that's it's just a really interesting notion. As far as like a more general what if, I don't know, parts of me like just kind of love some of the stuff fans have come up with that I feel pressured to try to come up with anything on my own. It'd probably be something with Boo. Like, I don't know, fucking what if Boo woke up during the Cell games or some shit? To just like just imagining Cell like being all smug and proud of his shit during when he's building his arena, and then like Fat Boo just showing up and wrecking his whole world is really funny to me. So stuff like that. I don't know, maybe something Broly too. Finding a way to fit Broly into continuity earlier on, because as much as I like the Super Broly movie, God, as soon as we introduced Super Saiyan God, we immediately undercut it left and right. Like, as much as I like that movie, there's no logical reason Broly should be able to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a thing you have to like work with Dragon Ball. I've always thought if you wanted to rope Broly into continuity and we do just reboot Dragon Ball, we should just make Broly like one of the Saiyans that's working with Vegeta that survived the explosion of the planet, and you just contrive some way for him to get out of the fight so he doesn't die, and he comes back later like for vengeance or something.
I mean, I think I can do that real quick. All right, so Vegeta, Nappa, Raditz, and young Broly are conquering a planet in the name of Frieza, and Broly just gets Berserker Rage and kicks their asses and like just keeps rampaging over the planet, and they just decide to leave his ass since all of them know they can't take him. And then you just got like this mad rampaging Saiyan out there in the universe just waiting like a time bomb. There you go. You're welcome.
That would work. I'm totally down for that.
$500,000, please.
You'll get your check.
Yeah, so I don't know, that shit is just really cool. As far as other fan what ifs that are like outside of Dragon Ball, I mean, I read the late 90s, early 2000s Marvel and DC crossovers, They're not good. I think I've read a lot more Marvel DC crossover stuff that's a lot better as fan fiction, you know?
I've still always had a very particular itch for Daredevil versus Batman, except it doesn't suck.
Yes.
Daredevil versus Batman is like the greatest thing ever, and no one's ever capitalized on like the two most broody bad boy characters in comics coming to blows for no good reason.
Yeah.
And I hate the fact that it almost happened.
I know.
Because, like Bendis, like when he was on his Daredevil run, I forget who else he was talking to, but it was someone in the Batman books, like during the War Games time ish, and he was just like, "Hey, why don't we just fucking do this?" And then they had like a whole like fan, again, this is when the fans become the creators. They had a whole fan like project time, as if it was a what if of this is the world where Batman and Daredevil coexist, and this is their timeline, all the different people they fight and stuff, and what they disagree with. And Batman cannot intimidate this guy because he literally, his power is seeing through bullshit because he's blind, so he can't get the back glare. He's perfect. So that was gonna happen, but then I think it was Joe Quesada. He was just in that stupid ass mentality where he's like, if you're a Marvel kid, you're a Marvel kid. If you're a DC kid, you're a DC kid. Fuck collaborations. That's awful. And I'm just like, thanks, Joe Quesada, ruining my dreams once more.
Yeah.
Brian Michael Bendis would have low-key been like the perfect person to write that story too. Like over anyone else I can think of off the top of my head, or like even like some of my favorite Batman writers, like if Grant Morrison or even Tom King pitched it, no one could do that as well as Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe Frank Miller in the 80s, but...
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like that as much, I don't think.
Fair enough. One
Also,
thing that
Winter Soldier versus Nightwing.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's like a popular fan fight, if nothing else. I've seen some cool fan films of that. One of the things I should probably talk about here is the Super Team Family blog, where the guy just posts like these fake comic book covers that he makes, and just all of them are these, brilliant what ifs, and they've got their own continuity, which is kind of funny. Like, Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman are married, and that's an ongoing thing across multiple comic book covers. What's the other one? Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and Kara Danvers are sisters. That's really fun. One of my favorites, this only got a two-parter, but you reminded me of it when you said Daredevil, is Daredevil becomes a Green Lantern because he's a man without fear.
That's so fucking dope.
Yeah, and he even like did a Photoshop of the costume to make it green. It's super sick.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, that shit's so cool. And there's just a million of them.
I think you sent me a couple of those too. Like there's one where it's like the X-Men except they're the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like RoboCop becomes Batman. Just shit that's like I never would think of in a million years, and it's super fun though. One of them I remember sending to you was like I can't remember. He likes to make teams. He likes to make teams with like classic Silver Age motifs. And so he made like a circus performer team. So you had like Hawkeye, Ghost Rider, Nightwing, just all the characters. Whose background, Mr. Miracle, whose background is like circus or performance or whatever, just on a team together. It's hilarious.
Greatest thing ever.
Yeah. So like that shit can just, it's got so much fun to it. And there is just that, yeah, Alfie, I think you kind of put it right on the money earlier. It was just, there's such a just schoolyard bullshit kind of fun to it that's super cool. And it just gets exciting to think about. Have you guys seen like a fan pitch for a what if that like you legitimately don't understand why like that would be appealing? Like you don't get the interest in it whatsoever. You can't even see it on premise.
I know a creator one. I know an officially licensed DC thing that's really popular.
Okay.
Injustice.
No, okay. I will take up for Injustice, if only because I think everyone... Okay, maybe not everyone. There was a very brief period of time where people who liked Injustice liked it because it was the stupidest fucking thing ever, and that I was one of those people. Where like I was convinced, I was telling all of my friends when the first game came out, like, no, this is gonna be the greatest thing ever because it's so dumb, and none of them believed me. And then I bought the game, and we were playing it constantly every single day after school because it's so dumb, and we loved it. And now that it's like become a sincere, real thing, it is significantly less fun.
Yeah. And like that was my thing, is like, that's so dumb, I'm never gonna do anything with it. And then I got the DC app and it's like, okay, you can read all of Injustice. Well, I'm kinda getting into Tom Taylor. Let's give this a try. I'm like, okay, actually no, this isn't half bad. Game's still stupid.
It isn't terrible. It's just a lot of shitty stuff he has to deal with.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pure
But like
concept wise.
Yeah, but like so much of it he sells. Like
exactly. He's a great guy.
Say what you will about like Superman being evil in the most ridiculous circumstances ever, but like his justification for Hal Jordan becoming a Yellow Lantern is like legit one of the best Sinestro stories I've ever read. I legit love that whole second year. That like start to finish, the second year is great. So yeah, I could see that though, Alfie. I could see the dislike just on premise alone. I was talking more like, why would anyone ever like that? Like, you can dislike the idea of evil Superman, evil Justice League, but like you understand why it's there, because people are bitter and they don't like positivity. So like you can understand. There's some what ifs though where I'm just like, but like, what's interesting about that? Why would what is even like the premise to care about that? Where does that even start?
I've had a lot of that with like, I mentioned some of these earlier, but like the Marvel ones where it's just like, what if the twist of a popular story was the opposite of what you thought it was? I always thought those were just the dumbest cop-out things ever. It's like when Bat in the Sun does like the character death battles and then they release an alternate ending. I'm like, what's the fucking point?
The point is to make more money.
Apparently. Like, no, the point of Dark Phoenix Saga is Jean Grey dies. You can't just come out of your ass with a what if of like, what if she lived?
You know, like, you made me think of this earlier, and it just didn't seem appropriate to mention it, but did you guys see that news story that was floating around a couple months back where, like, the Mexican comic industry decided not to kill Gwen Stacy and just publish, like, 20-something issues of them as a couple?
Isn't that amazing?
I want them all to get collected so badly.
Did it ever get translated? Like, I feel like that really should have been translated.
There's a fan movement in the Spider-Man community to try and get it translated or something, but so far nothing.
The issues exist, and if you want to buy them, they're pretty cheap. The problem is just, you'd have to speak Spanish.
Yeah, and who does that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Clearly not the three of us.
¿Cómo estás, mi amigo Steve?
I can read German and I can read French, but I cannot do Spanish.
Yeah? What kind of philosopher are you?
Apparently a good one.
Ouch. Ouch. Okay. Yeah, like, shit like that's just kind of crazy, where it's like, yeah, it's a what if, and it was an official thing that was, like, making money. Who would have known? I'm trying to think of mine for like just really like stuff I've just seen where I'm like, but I don't understand. And some of them, like, I feel like it's become such a thing that people just suggest what ifs out the wazoo, and I'm like, well, are you just like throwing stuff at the wall, or do you legitimately want to see this? Like, Alfie, I don't mean to call your video out too much, but like someone commented on that where it's like, what if Vegeta, wasn't evil but kept his Saiyan pride? And I'm like, well, what's even interesting about that character?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I don't even get the premise on that one.
There's one. This one I'm like conflicted on because it's one I'm like, I used to be like, I think every Dragon Ball fan's had this. But like, I feel like if you put 2 seconds thought into it, you immediately kind of undercut so much, and it's really kind of boring. Like, there's no story there, there's no character there. It's the popular like, what if Gohan never stopped training? And I'm just like, yeah, but then you're just writing away his problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically saying, what if Gohan wasn't Gohan?
Exactly. It's like the Vegeta, the popular one is like, what if Vegeta got the win here? What if Vegeta like beat everyone? It's like, I feel like maybe that side of what ifs, where like sometimes you don't really get it, comes from a less pure sense of like fan, like, oh, this would be cool, and more so, I have an attachment to certain characters that I want them to see them only get success.
Mm-hmm. Like, and it's funny for me because I've kind of got that a little bit, but not out in spades. Like, I remember when I was a kid watching Dragon Ball, man, Vegeta should have gotten the win against Semi-Perfect Cell. It's bullshit that he was written completely in character to let him develop into a more dangerous monster. Like, in retrospect, I see exactly what was going on there, and I think it's actually a really, really good character moment. But at the same time, there's other points from which I'm like, what the fuck's the point of the first Broly movie? Like, everything on paper, Vegeta deserved the win there. He deserved to be the one to defeat it. And really, it's not even like Goku has a clever way to beat Broly. He just punches him really hard. It's
but like, really, if you want to think about this on that level, what the fuck's the point with Broly?
Yeah, no, I mean the movie's bad. Like the original
No,
Broly.
I don't even just mean the movie. I just mean like as a concept, what the fuck?
Okay.
Like why Broly? I don't understand anyone's sort of like fixation and obsession with dude who's just really strong.
I mean, it is entirely because he looks really cool.
Yeah, and I don't get it. I don't think I ever really will.
I think like he's become the thing where once they made him, you have to make justifications for him, and then you can make him interesting, which is why I think like the super version worked. But I am entirely with you that on premise alone, introducing the legendary Super Saiyan is complete bullshit nonsensical thing when we literally already established that Goku is the legendary Super Saiyan.
Yeah, but at the same time...
Oh my god, he's so fucking cool!
And he's
Like,
so dumb!
Legit, we spend an entire arc, which is very rare for Dragon Ball to foreshadow things, of establishing this is Super Saiyan. Super Saiyan is this. This is the big reveal. Here's the climactic thing. Super Saiyan is this thing. This is what the legend is. And then Broly rocks up and is like, nah, it was really green.
Yeah, totally. But I don't know, like, everything about the Broly movie to me is like, the original Broly movie is like, okay, we have this character that is literally everything Vegeta ever wanted to be. And it's awful, and he, you know, you can see the arc there. You can see the moment of realization of that. And you could see the like symbolic meaning of him being able to defeat the version of himself that he used to want to be. And instead Goku just does it, and it's like, well, that's very anticlimactic. And I don't know, it's just it's a thing. And so then there's like the other what if King Vegeta hadn't gotten rid of Broly? Well, then I guess he would have killed Frieza, and the Saiyans would have still been dicks. Like, that's okay. There's your what if. Congratulations. Have a good day. Some of that stuff just, I don't know. It gets kind of interesting and kind of silly.
I think one that really defeated the purpose. It was a Star Wars one, and it was, what if Emperor Palpatine never rose to power? I'm just like, there's no story.
Yeah, like, you can kind of go places with what if Luke did turn to the dark side, and then you can get fucking hilarious shit like, what if the apprentice killed Darth Vader and then turned Luke to the dark side and then killed Princess Leia, who also became a Jedi? And it's like, God, this is just wish fulfillment for some people, isn't it?
One I've never completely understood is stories where either what if Batman killed or what if Joker died.
God,
Those
Joker
two just
dinosaurs
never
are boring.
make sense to me, and I don't care Because if you do them as what ifs, there's no stakes to it, and it doesn't matter anyway. And if you do them in continuity, you're going to undo them in like 3 weeks anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you guys ever see that like really bad, really popular, edgy Batman Joker fan comic when they like jump off a blimp?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this made the rounds like years back, and just you saying that, Steve, really made me think of this because it's precisely that. It's like this really gritty, like needlessly dude bro edge of Batman's in a cage and he's next to Jim Gordon's severed head, and Joker sends him a box and it's Alfred's body parts. It's like the most gritty, dark thing you could ever get. Batman goes to a blimp and he grabs Joker by the throat and they jump off together and they fall to their deaths, and it ends with them saying that they're going to be forever and they're in love, and the blood spat makes a love heart. And people were like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever, this is so deep, so insightful. I'm like, what the fuck even is this?
That weirdly sounds like the worst and most amazing thing ever at the same time.
Like, legit, look it up after this. It's precisely that idea of a fan what if just being on something. Like, I have no, like, the art's really trippy. Like, I don't know what the fuck. Or even, like, you want to go fan films. Someone had the desire to see what would happen if Batman got cocaine and butt raped.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Batman Dead
That
End
was
did a
pretty
review
bad.
of that one. Did a review of that one. Batman got
That's
tased in the junk and then raped. That's
Or reasons.
Yeah. Well, like the really funny thing in that is during the rape scene, there's like a news broadcast being played in the background, and or not news, like a television broadcast being played in the background, and it's like top 10 sexiest Gotham bachelors. Number 1, Bruce Wayne. And it's like literally it's like 2 women talking about how sexy Bruce Wayne is on like the corner of the screen while Batman is being anally raped by and like the main shot. And it's like, what are you doing? Oh, that fucking movie. That's a bad fan film. You should go watch that. And yeah, it's a bad one. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I got one thing though. The big what if news, which is kind of current, is that Marvel's now doing an animated what if series, which is going to be strictly MCU. And like the first one of that's going to be what if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum. How are you guys feeling about that? Like, we're now doing, the MCU's gotten so big at this point that we're now doing what ifs for that. And do you think that maybe has, because kind of that Dragon Ball thing where we've got like a single canon to follow, do you think it'd be good, or maybe it's missing on some potential?
Steve,
I
you go
love
first.
that idea. I wish it wasn't animated because they're getting basically all the actors back for their episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the thing, but at the same time, they are doing it so late in the game that a lot of people have aged up quite significantly anyway. You know, you gotta think about it. Some of these actors that they're gonna be pulling haven't been on camera, or what the timeline at which they're putting the character back on camera is like 10 years difference. And that starts to get like significantly different. Like, Haley Atwell is very attractive woman. She does not look the same as she did in 2011. Like I remember even watching like some episodes of Agent Carter. I'm like, you can tell this is several years later. Just based on, you know, how people naturally age. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, it's a weird visual continuity thing. So I don't mind the idea of it being animated for that reason. Peggy Carter as Captain America is such a cool idea that Exiles did fuck all with for like not even an issue. God, I got so hyped for Exiles based solely on Peggy Carter as Captain America, and she's in it for like an issue and a half, and then it's all over. And it's like, you marketed your book on that. What were you thinking? Anyway, all is well, all is calm. Not a good series. You shouldn't read it. as far as Marvel's MCU What If, I don't know, it's an interesting premise, but at the same time, I'm just not sure how much they're going to be able to do with it, which is weird because, yeah, the MCU has like this one continuous canon, but it's also got such relatively short installments in that canon that it's kind of hard to imagine many what ifs, and maybe I'm going to be completely wrong on that, but I'm just like, okay, but like, what do you do that's going to be significantly different given how short a time span all of these things take place in? Like a lot of people, as a complaint against Iron Man 3, are like, oh, I mean, if the president got kidnapped, shouldn't that kind of, shouldn't that get the other Avengers or something involved? And I kind of even agree with that. But the counter argument is, oh, well, it all just happens so fast that no one else besides Tony Stark has time for it. I'm like, or has time to get involved. I'm like, okay, I could see that. And I just think you might be dealing with kind of a similar problem. Like, is there an MCU film that takes place over more than like a week? Not including Endgame that has a 5-year gap.
Yeah, I was going to say, the one that takes place over the course of 5 years.
Yeah, not including Endgame that's got a 5-year gap. Is there an MCU movie that takes place over more than like a week? Maybe Homecoming?
Yeah.
Far From Home,
maybe. I guess depends how long you think certain things in Civil War happened for, like how long certain scenes are placed out, when the Accords of...
I think the Russos have, and I mean, the Russos are basically J.K. Rowling now, but this is before that. The Russos, I think, made pretty clear that Civil War is basically in the span of a few days, or else, like, people losing their minds wouldn't make as much sense.
Yeah, it's that heightened sense of tension.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, it's just the events are so small. So, like, you can change the beginning or the end of the event, and that's one thing, but just a lot of the drama is just happening so quickly, relatively speaking, you know? That it's kind of hard to imagine exactly where you go with a what if, and I'm sure they've thought this problem through, and certainly Peggy Carter's Captain America is not going to be a problem in that regard, you know? That changes the premise completely, so it changes things dramatically. I'm just not sure.
No, you make a really good point, and if anything, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot by giving us like the best possible what if thing that they have first. Because like, what else is it in that universe that's as interesting as Peggy Carter as Captain America? Like, what if Tony and Steve didn't fight during Civil War?
Yeah.
What if Doctor Strange didn't become Sorcerer Supreme? I don't know.
I guess you could do like, what if Killmonger did kill T'Challa?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Fun.
That could be an episode. Yeah, you can like, all right, so Wakanda does declare war on the world, and we'll see how that goes. It's probably not gonna. Yeah, it's probably not gonna work out the way he thought it would. That could be interesting.
You could do a lot with the TV shows, which I know they don't want to anymore because they're basically all dead now. But you could do a lot with
Agents
like.
of S.H.I.E.L.D. still going?
Yeah.
Wow.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s about to end though. It's got one season left, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, no one gives a shit about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I didn't even mean Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I just meant stuff like, what if Daredevil did kill Wilson Fisk? Or like...
Which time, Steve?
That's a fair question. It's a very fair question. Or what if Jessica Jones didn't kill Kilgrave?
Which time, Steve?
I don't know, but fair question.
There's your multiple. There you get a whole series out of just different times Jessica Jones and Matt Murdock could have killed people.
I'd watch it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. So, like, maybe that would... Like, from what I hear, I'm hearing conflicting things about the Marvel series. And the general thing I'm hearing is that Disney wants to use those characters again. They've just got to wait for certain rights to evaporate as far as Netflix is concerned. And so this is not the way Disney works anymore, but I will say this for the way Disney used to work at one time. Walt Disney kept Guy Williams on contract for like 2 years to play Zorro while he was battling out shit in the courts because he wanted to keep the Guy Williams Zorro show running. But after 2 years of battling it out, he decided that the public consciousness just kind of moved on, and he wouldn't be able to bring Zorro back even if he kept the same cast and everything. And so he let Guy Williams go and to do other things. But he paid that man like he was still filming Zorro every day for 2 years. Disney does kind of have that long view of things. So it's conceivable that they'll bring, Daredevil and shit back.
I'm positive they'll bring it back, but I think it's all going to be a soft reboot. I mean, I don't think, as much as I would love it, I don't think Charlie Cox is coming back as Daredevil at any point.
It's certainly possible.
I think the only one who has a chance of that is going to be D'Onofrio, because he could play a different version of Kingpin.
To be perfectly honest, if they do bring Kingpin back, I'd really be okay with them recasting, because I did not care for that interpretation of Kingpin, even though it was well done.
Especially now that they've got Mahershala Ali as Blade, and they basically just used one title character and turned him into a different title character. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure they're basically just wiping the slate clean of those movies. The fact that Endgame, of all things, didn't seem to give a shit about any of the running TV shows and only cares about the ones that it's setting up on Disney Plus, I think none of them matter and none of them ever will.
That's Guy fair. From Iron Man 1 who got shouted at because Tony Stark built this in a cave appeared in a Spider-Man movie before Daredevil.
Yep. That is precisely how little anything that isn't the movies and Disney Plus matter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. What was the question?
It was just generally asking your thoughts on the What If series, which I think a lot of us got most of that out there. I'm just, because from where we're standing, it sounds like they're just going to do that. But a lot of people have been like zooming in like crackpot conspiracy theorists on like the teaser image they showed of it, and like the Marvel zombies are in that.
I mean,
that'd be fun.
Maybe. I guess you could do a Marvel Zombies What If in the MCU.
Like, is this going to be not just events we've seen, but like entirely different stories of what if this showed up in the MCU?
I mean, I guess you could probably do what if, like, MCU finally interacting with 616.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I don't think you're ever going to be able to, like... Has anyone here actually read any of the MCU prequel comics?
No.
I read the one for Winter Soldier and it was meaningless.
Yeah, like those are all completely pointless, and I dare anyone to convince me otherwise.
They were so bad that they gave them away for free, and no one bought them still.
I refuse to spend $0 on this
because they were boring and they didn't matter.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem that the MCU has had, is just they can't tie in things with it because the movies are going to be the only thing that's allowed to matter. That's the same problem like that the Star Wars comics have had since Disney bought Star Wars. It's like, even if the stories are good, none of them actually matter because they can't have anything to do with the movies. So it's either we're just
like an
spinning our wheels.
Catch-22 in this situation where like they kind of did the smart thing, which is what I've been wanting them to do ever since Age of Ultron, which is write out the big names, have a new Avengers team that isn't full of expensive famous people, and then do like TV shows or like longer running movie stories with them. And that way you can get everything you'd want and get all the tie-ins and stuff without having to worry about making every movie an event. Except now they did that, and all the people that they brought in that weren't big stars are still big stars, so they can't do that exactly, so they have to do this bullshit Disney Plus thing. Mm-hmm. Like, Scarlet Witch in WandaVision sounds amazing, but you know it's going to be like a one-season prestige format Disney Plus thing that you'll only ever get to watch once like it's a movie, and then it's forced to matter because she's going to be in the Doctor Strange sequel. but it still doesn't do the thing that these were supposed to do, which is give us time to spend in the world. They're all going to be one story. They're not going to be world building.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. Oh,
Which
well.
I find funny, like, it's quite ironic, maybe a good place thing is just like, it's gonna be maybe the What If series that's gonna be in different continuities that might tell us the most about the MCU continuity.
That would be
Because you
hilarious.
kind of have to sit with it, with those.
I would almost be fine if they like took some of the what if premises from the comics and tried to MCU them. Like, what if Daredevil became a Shield agent, except it's Netflix's Daredevil?
Yeah.
Like,
mean, that
you'd
could
run
be
out of
fun.
those super quick because there's only so many that apply to the MCU.
Especially given how many changes they've made and stuff. Yeah, I guess you
I mean,
do
they could
like
do
one for
one-
each movie. You just try to find an interesting what if in each movie. Like, I don't know. What if Ironmonger won the fight against Tony and capitalized on the Iron Man armor? And then you've got like a dystopian world.
What if Tony never needed the arc reactor?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to think like, okay, let's do it real quick. We'll try to be quick on this. A what if for each MCU movie. All right. So, Incredible Hulk.
What if Bruce Banner died when he hit the ground?
Yeah, what if he just immediately died?
Okay.
And now you have to have the Avengers without the Hulk.
Yeah. Thor. Wait, shit, I skipped
What
Iron
if-
Man 2. Iron Man 2.
Oh,
Maybe this isn't as interesting and readily available as I thought it would be.
It kind of isn't.
skip Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 happens as is the universal constant.
Okay. Thor?
Loki wins.
Alright. What's next then? Is it Avengers? Seriously?
Captain America.
Oh, Captain America, right. Okay.
What if Steve actually died?
Yeah, okay. Avengers.
What if
Oh.
Coulson lived?
Yeah, sure. Alright. Iron Man 3.
What if Pepper died?
Yeah, okay. Ooh, that is a really good one. I can see that. Sorry to make her cannon fodder, but shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Winter Soldier next? Question
Thor:
mark?
The Dark World.
Oh, Thor the Dark World. Wow. Who could forget Thor the Dark World?
What if all that one was a good movie?
Yeah, what if it didn't suck?
All right. And then we go Winter Soldier. What if Hydra wins? Seems pretty obvious there, too.
Or what if Bucky was never the Winter Soldier?
Okay. Yeah. Age of Ultron? Question mark?
Vision doesn't get made?
Okay.
Or Ultron gets Vision's body?
Yeah, what if Ultron does get Vision's body?
All right.
How do they stop it?
I mean, you have to kill someone.
Guardians
to
of
do
the
that.
Galaxy, we skipped that one.
Oh yeah, we skipped Guardians. Okay. What if Ronan didn't stand there like a fucking idiot during the dance-off? You know, I hate CinemaSins, but they did make just a point that I'm never going to be able to unsee with Guardians. It's a good thing he uses the blow everybody slightly across the room power with this Infinity Stone as opposed to the planet destroying power with this Infinity Stone right here. I'm like, shit.
What if Thanos killed Ronan and actually did it himself?
Yeah, okay. All right. Oh, what else?
Ant-Man there?
Ant-Man. Okay.
What if Edgar Wright still made the movie?
Yeah.
Damn. Now we're really talking. Get Edgar right for the What If series and we're going to waste over with one.
Oh, man.
Well, no.
Okay.
If we did Ant-Man, what if Janet didn't get lost in the quantum realm?
Okay, so she's there for the whole movie?
Or
Yeah.
what if Scott got lost in the quantum round in Ant-Man and then comes back in Endgame?
Oh, that'd be weird.
That would be super cool.
Yeah. Okay, I like that one. Man, that would make Ant-Man such a better movie if it had a fucking downer ending like that. Ah, could you imagine?
What's next? Civil War?
Yeah.
I guess it's just if Tony won. Like if Tony got to kill Bucky and Cap goes to jail.
Yeah. What if they catch Cap? Or what if Cap signed the Accords?
Okay. All right. Homecoming?
What if Peter Parker was never recruited in Civil War?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just do the whole film low tech.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Thor Ragnarok? Hulk wasn't on Scar.
Yeah, if just Hulk wasn't there, what does Thor do?
Okay. I mean, can we just have the Jeff Goldblum movie? Like, please?
Yes.
This is a very successful revolution. I think we did very well for our first time. That fucking guy. All right. Then you get into what's
Black
what's that?
Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther. I already said I shot my shot. What if Killmonger succeeded?
It's ready to go.
Yeah. I think
Guardians 2.
Guardians 2.
Quill accepts Ego's offer.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. See, and that's I guess becoming kind of the problem with these. How many of them have just been what if the villains won?
I mean, that's the problem
like,
with
what
a
if
lot
the-
of. Yeah.
Yeah, either that or what if the conflict just changed? Like, we're basically just rewriting different movies. We're not creating scenarios that are legitimately interesting and different.
Yeah, and see, that's what I'm kind of worried about with the What If series, is there is such a limited scope of things to do if you're sticking very hard to MCU. And so, like, it's not that there's not potential. Like, I really like the Ant-Man one. There are a couple others in there that I really do like, but some of them are just, okay, but what if the villain wins? Just kind of becomes the premise. And so that's kind of what I was getting at with the shorter time frame and stuff, the more limited
Well, and
focus.
ultimately, the point of some of this what if stuff, the way Marvel did it, was to kind of show the long run consequences of one insignificant or one seemingly insignificant change. So, like, for example, if Peggy Carter did become the super soldier, that fundamentally alters how everything else happens for, like, the rest of the MCU. That's not the same thing as what if Pepper Potts died? Like, every movie could still basically happen.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's just, I don't know, it's interesting to think of that and kind of see where those things go. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about with what ifs?
Nope. I'm pretty much done. I'm just I'm very happy that this was hopefully if anyone wants to go to my childhood future, I'll have learned from these lessons. This will just be, if I repeat any of these mistakes, Ian and Steve are allowed to beat me.
I mean, I'll beat you anyway, dear. Alrighty. Oh, everyone, thanks for watching. See, so I guess it'd be Steve's choice for a review topic.
Yeah. Let's review Mr. Miracle.
Okay. Alrighty. Should be interesting. Dark Side is, 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 Dark Side is. Someone make a song.
Is.
Alrighty. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm a geek for fun.
And I'm Steve.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.